Welcome to Start Local, where we talk with business owners, leaders of nonprofits, and other members of our community focused on doing business in and around Chester County, Pennsylvania. Each episode will provide insight into the local business scene and tell you about opportunities to connect with and support businesses and nonprofits in your local area.
The Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce promotes trade, commerce, industry, and sustainable economic development while supporting a diverse and growing marketplace. The Chamber is proud to partner with the Start Local podcast to raise the profile of businesses and nonprofits throughout Chester County. Learn more about the Chamber at sccc.com. That's sccc.com.
Hey, welcome to the Start Local podcast. I am Liam Dempsey, and we are back in the studio for another session here. I am delighted to be here with the one, the only, Eric Goodmanson. Hello, Eric.
Oh, man. If there were more of me, there might be a good thing. I might have more spare time on my day, but good to see you, Liam.
And you. And I think if I hung out with multiple yous, I would have to be the lead singer and you would be the backup singer.
I would be happy to be a backup singer in your band, Liam.
I don't think anybody would want to hear me sing. But anyway, folks, today we are delighted to welcome Geoff Bosley. Geoff is the Vice President and CFO of LGB Properties. That's a property company based in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. Geoff, welcome to the Start Local podcast.
Thanks for having me, Liam. Appreciate it. Eric, it's always good seeing you, buddy.
Yeah, likewise. It's we used to see each other quite a bit when we served together on the board of the Southern Chester County Chamber, but I'm looking forward to getting into the conversation today.
For sure.
Geoff, we just introduced you as an owner, as a vice president, a CFO of LGB Properties, and not everybody might know that name as a business that is in and around Kennett Square. But we expect that your most well-known property is the Market at Liberty Place. Folks in Kennett Square will definitely know that venue very well. For those who live in the other corners of the county, tell us about the Market at Liberty Place.
Market at Liberty Place is Kennett's, version of the Reading Terminal Market, or the Fisherman's Wharf out in San Francisco, or the Pike Market in Seattle. So it has a Kennett flavor to it. It's obviously smaller since we're in a smaller town, but it's an eatery. We have 7 different restaurants inside, along with a full service bar. So, people come for a lot of different reasons, and they have, a lot of different choices when they get in there. It's a casual atmosphere, but it's, has a pretty nice vibe to it. And, there's a lot of use out of it within the community, which is great to see.
Every time I go in there, I always see people I know, and I always walk out very full and very content. So it's definitely a good spot to be, and a good community gathering place. I want to go back to LGB Properties as a company. It's a real estate management and renovation firm. You own and run that business with your father, Larry Bosley. Talk to us about working so closely with your dad, and if you would, tell us how you came to work together.
Yeah, look, working with him is terrific. We've been close for my entire life, and so it's great. This is just an extension of that. I don't think we started out, dreaming of a real estate company. He was superintendent of schools in Kennett, and then he retired, I think, in '99, and started doing some consulting. At that point, I was in college, and I think he just didn't like working from home. He was on the early stages of people working from home and that sort of thing, but he just didn't really like it, didn't have any separation between working and living and that sort of thing. And, you get tied up with things around the house, and then next thing you know, you don't put the work down. You're just working all night, that sort of thing. So he just wanted a separation, if you will. So he bought a building in Kennett on Broad Street. We still own the building. Like I said, I think that was in '99. I was in college. It just, and he asked me over the building needs some work. There was a lot. It was a little rough, but he had a vision for it. And over the summer and Christmas break, he said, hey, come help me. And so wasn't thinking about other than just trying to help my dad and pass my day and that sort of thing. So did a lot of the demolition work and and learned some things about it and thought it was kind of interesting. I'm taking a class in real estate in college at Virginia Tech and read a couple books. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. So in the meantime, he enjoyed it as well. And a couple years later, the building next door became available. So he went ahead and bought that. Consulting was going well. He was busy. He had a lot of great experiences, traveled a lot, but I think at that point, the grind of traveling was starting to get to be a lot. My mom was still teaching, so she couldn't travel with him as much as they would have liked. And then 9/11 happened, so travel just became an extra layer of a pain, if you will. And I think he was in the World Trade Center 2 weeks before 9/11. So, I think that obviously hit close to home and that sort of thing. So it just got to the point where it was just exhausting, the traveling. And, he's not one to let the grass grow under his feet. So he wanted to, go ahead and find something else to do. And in the meantime, we had talked a little bit more about the real estate. I was working for Wyeth Pharmaceuticals. Didn't love it, didn't hate it, but it just felt like a job. Didn't know if I wanted to do that for the next 30 or 35 years of my life. So, we just said, hey, let's go ahead and make this a full-fledged business. And that was probably 2003 when we decided to go ahead and move forward with that. And in 2008, I left my job with Wyeth and came full-time. So 2008 became, it was a rough year in the financial world and everything. So, it was a rough start. It was a hard sled to push. But that's life. And, you lean on that as things go on, and that if you can get through that, you can start a business through that, then, you can get through anything. And that was, so looking back, it was a great time to start. Even in the moment, it seemed like like, what the heck am I doing here? Didn't seem like a great life decision at the time.
Yeah, that's a tough way to start, but that you're still working with your dad means you guys got through it pretty well. Let's jump up ahead to today. Your property company has industrial, office, retail, and even some residential properties. Show us around your portfolio of properties. What and where is available to rent from you?
Like you said, the market is, or I'd say our signature property. And people, you talk to people and they ask you, what do you do for a living or that sort of thing. And we have office space, and that people say, "Oh, that's interesting. Okay, move on." They find out that you're involved in the market, and then people get a lot of conversation about that. So I said, "Oh, I love the tacos at Kebab Burritos," or what's the new business? How's that doing? Or whatever. Why is this? Or the live music you guys have on Friday and Saturday. Like, I love the band. I was there 2 weeks ago, and I love the band, and that sort of thing. So, that it's funny. People obviously have an interest in that because I think they touch it and feel it on a regular basis. We have a couple other restaurants. La Verona and Portobello's are our tenants, and they do both a great job right on State Street. So La Verona is an Italian restaurant. Portobello is like a fine dining restaurant. Both are very popular and do a great job. We have office space. We range from folks like my dad 25 years ago needing a singular office to people that have larger space. So like I said, we have a lot of sole proprietors and people that have one or two employees, and then we have larger companies as well. Have a couple daycares, Ducklings Daycare. They have two in Landenberg, one right off 41, and then one down in Kimblesville. And like I said, we have some apartments and that sort of thing. So our tenant mix is pretty interesting. I get to talk to a lot of different people and learn a little bit about what they do and the range of tenants that we have and businesses that we support is pretty interesting. But like I said, we range from small offices where people just need a place to work, and they have a shared conference room and a shared waiting area, and we clean the bathrooms and the common areas and all of that. So they just show up and have an internet connection and are able to get their work done to, say, more traditional office space of a larger size.
You've definitely grown an impressive little empire in southern Chester County, and it's really nice. They are nice properties. Like they're actually pleasurable to go through. It doesn't feel like a cookie cutter, set of spaces, and I always appreciate that whenever I walk into one of your properties. Your company's mission is posted on your website. It says it's to improve the community's quality and municipalities' economic viability through the commercial and residential real estate market. Hopefully I got that right.
You did.
What does that mean to you in your day-to-day work? I'm curious how, from your perspective, you're working to fulfill that mission.
The project has to make sense, and obviously it's a business, right? So it's got to make sense from a dollars and cents standpoint, but it has to make sense to the town. And having community places like the market or Flowers Cafe in Oxford. I took after church on Sunday, we went there as a family, and it was great to see. And there's the place was packed, and seeing a number of different people having a gathering place and a place for them to come. Obviously your offices, people need a place to go work, and having that a job base in a town is important, because that supports the local economy, and that supports housing and all those other things. So finding projects that when they're done, they fit in well with the town and provide a service in their community, I think makes sense. So obviously daycare, when we sat down with Ducklings, we found areas that they felt were a little underserved, and the one on Star Road, Ducklings went through and they came to us. We had a relationship with them from another facility, and they said, we don't have anyone who's going to go to New Garden Elementary School in our portfolio. We are not serving that community. So, well, now you have 140 kids there, and I think probably a majority of them will probably end up going to New Garden Elementary or other local schools. But the whole point was, they said, we have a need, and it filled up in a hurry, which tells you that it was underserved in that particular area. So that makes you feel good. And the properties have to look a certain way, and you want to be proud to own them, if you will, and that sort of thing. So if I didn't want to, somebody I was just telling, say, hey, we own that property, if I was embarrassed or ashamed to say that, then either needs to change, or that's not a property for us.
Before we hit the record button, Geoff, you were sharing that LGB Properties is a small company in terms of employees. Eric described it as a nice little empire at the southern end of the county, but not a lot of people draw a paycheck or are a part of the company. It's you, it's your father, as we shared, and you've shared that it's sometimes your wife and sometimes your mom. So the question becomes, really, how do you run a property management and development company on such a boutique structure? What does that look like? How do you build success when it's really two guys trying to get it done?
We work really hard. That's one of the things. I think at this point, my wife is probably close to full-time status. So obviously our kids are 10 and 12. So we have some flexibility in the summer or break. We will figure out the workload. If I pick up a little bit of it then, or, we'll make it work. Snow days, that kind of thing. But, obviously her just having that flexibility is great for us and our family. But, she works a lot, and she's super helpful. My mom is also helpful in going to the bank, the post office, stopping at wherever to grab something. Just, there's so many things involved that are necessary. But we have a cleaning staff that does a great job. They're not employees, but we contract with them, and they take really good care of our properties, and same thing with maintenance. So I wouldn't say we do it alone, but from in the office, it's 2 to 3 people. So some businesses are heavy on personnel, and that's where companies draw revenue. And that's how, they contract for services or that sort of thing. That's not our our situation. So our expenses are capital expenditures and building, the insurance and the taxes and the mortgages and those kinds of things. That's where the expenses. So it's a little bit of a different model, where employees aren't. You don't need as many employees touching. I also like the fact that when a tenant calls or I get a text or an email or and say, hey, our sink's leaking, one of us is going to be the one to go out and take a look. It's not going to get passed down the message too far. And our top maintenance guy is really conscientious. So there's a lot of times where we'll send him as well, but it's still someone that people know, and it's just not a random person showing up and that sort of thing. And I think the attention to detail goes a long way with folks, and just knowing that we're listening and we're paying attention, and we want to make sure things are good, and that's a big part of our model.
Let's go back to the market at Liberty Place. It opened in 2010. And you and a business partner then opened a bar there in 2019. The restaurants that call the market have changed, call the market home, have changed over time. Tell us about the evolution of the market. How has your vision for the property changed over the 15 years that you've been open there?
Well, and Eric, I know you've been a supporter since the beginning. I think I remember you there, probably even at the grand opening. I remember seeing you there. I think we had lunch there, early on. Mm-hmm. It has changed, and quite frankly, we didn't know. We know a lot more now than we did, 12 or 13 years ago. Obviously, the experience of the whole thing. We knew we had a concept, and we thought it would work, and we said we're going to make this work. Honestly, our initial vision had more of a mix between purveyors and prepared foods, and for a number of reasons, I think it just kind of went in the way of the prepared foods. They just became more popular, and people gravitated towards that. So it's become more of a food hall. Even the name of the market has more of a different sound than probably if we named it today. It may not be the market. But at this point, it's the market in Kennett, and that's where the marketplace, or whatever people call it. And so that's where we are. But I think it's, like I said, I thought our initial thought had more of a balance between the two, but people gravitated toward it being more of a food hall and prepared food situation, and so that's great. It's just finding the right set of vendors, and I think early on, a couple of the better vendors were the prepared foods. Obviously, State Street Pizza and Grill is still there. So James Miller, my dad actually had James in school, and he graduated with my sister, with my older sister. So we've known James a long time, and he did a great job, and he runs a really, really tight ship. So he was one of our first recruits, if you will, and we went out and actively pursued James, and it was the right time for him and his family to go ahead and do the venture. And he's obviously still there, so he's super hard worker and really knows his business and that sort of thing. So that's great to see. And then you touched on the bar. We opened the bar together in 2019. Just felt like that was a big push forward for the market. There was a winery in there, but just they did a really good job, and they had good wine. Just having the flexibility to be able to serve liquor and all, beer, and in addition to the wine and that sort of thing. It was a game changer for the market in general. So having that in there, I think, has been a great compliment to everyone in the market. And it's funny because wine is now like a smaller portion of what is sold. I think it's probably only 10-12% usually of the total alcohol sold. So just having that ability to have options for customers, and we could do a few more things than we could have otherwise. I think it's made a big difference there.
It's been really interesting to watch the evolution of the market as time has gone on. And, there are definitely some vendors I really like in there. There have been, some vendors that aren't necessarily my favorite go-to choice for lunch. But I'm happy to say that the ones I love the most have been there for the long haul. And, everybody has their own favorite in there. It's really entertaining to watch people get so excited when they walk in the door.
And that's part of the selection, at the end of the day, in terms of the sales, then, the feedback from the customers in terms of where it's supported, that works out. We have a really good bunch right there, and they're really good people. Started out, there was some craziness and different vendors at different, it's been a lot to get to where it is now, but it's been very rewarding in terms of seeing the growth, and people enjoy it. And going there on a Friday night, and you see families with babies to single folks to people in their 80s there. You see this wide array, and kids are there, and teenagers there having a burger and a milkshake, and there's it's a pretty neat thing to see and feel like you were a part of. So it's been quite a ride for us.
It truly is a community gathering place. In addition to everything you're describing that you see there, you also see, small meetings taking place there. People kind of use it as an ad hoc, meeting place, whether it's for their business, if they want something out of the office, or even a local community organization, you'll see them in there. And you also see people on dates in there. It works for everything, and you have little niches and spaces that work for it. I wanted to ask you too about just the success of the market in the context of everything that's happening in Kennett Square, because Kennett Square as a borough has had its ups and downs. Genesis used to be a big anchor in town, and has a much smaller footprint there. But yet the market is always busy. It seems like, whether it's a lunchtime or a dinner time or even in between. How has that impacted your vision of what's happening there at the market?
Well, to be honest, I think when we started, you mentioned Genesis. A lot of the lunch business was based on Genesis, and that was right around 2019, right before COVID, when Genesis started to pull back in terms of their employee headcount in town. And quite frankly, I don't know if lunch is busy today as it is 2019. Fortunately, the evenings are significantly busier and weekends, so it's more than balanced it out. But not having that large employer in the center of town, that it would be nice to have that, and not just for the market, but for all the businesses in town. It's having that was such a huge benefit, and I think a lot of Kennett's growth over the last 20 years, 25 years has been, you really trace back to Genesis, and gave businesses the confidence to go ahead and start a business, because there was that foot traffic built in. When they built the building, they didn't have a cafeteria inside the building. They wanted people to go out and frequent the restaurants and all that sort of thing. And having that was quite a boon, and probably helped keep us afloat there as we were starting out back in the early years. So hopefully those buildings gain back at some point online, if you will, and having a lot of people is going to make a big difference. But like I said, I think the bar helped, where you can go and have a drink, so you're not just having food, but having a drink in the evening certainly has helped drive traffic. And we try to do things, a trivia night on Wednesday nights, which is always a great crowd. And to your point about having meetings, and it's a de facto community space, and people, I think, appreciate that. And I think they support that because of, they feel like it's a community, outpost,
Geoff, I was reading on your company website that you have held both elected and volunteer positions with the borough of Kennett Square. And you were an elected borough councilman for 2 terms. That's 8 years. And you served on the finance committee and on the planning commission. So I'm just curious, what was your experience of being so active in local government? What was that like? You were there for a long time.
Yeah, and actually, I still serve on the finance committee. There's a good chance I had my last meeting yesterday. If the budget passes, then there probably won't be a December meeting, and I submitted my resignation a couple weeks ago for it. So I've been on the Borough Finance Committee for 16 years. I was on council for 8, I think 2010 to 2017. It's funny. I was talking with the manager, Kyle Coleman, after the meeting yesterday, and we were just chatting about the town and that sort of thing. And I mentioned, of all of the volunteer activities that I've done, other than coaching my kids in sports and that sort of thing, being on Borough Council was actually my favorite. So I didn't get to serve on the board with you, Eric, like I did with the chamber, but it was quite our friend Doug, though I did get to serve with Doug Durfler, but it was a really interesting experience, and I took a lot out of it, and being able to help shape the town where you live, and try to solve issues within the town, and try to move the town forward, whether it be figuring out how to get the town safer or improve, just living in town, or in sidewalks, and figuring out how to grow the tax base, and working with the police, working with the school district, working with the neighboring municipalities. I mean, you touched on so many different things, and it was really a fun, neat experience. So I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It felt like 8 years was a good time to serve, and felt like it was time to let somebody else carry the ball for a little bit. I stayed on the finance committee, but really, really enjoyed my time on council, and I wouldn't rule it out again. Again, I've been on a lot of different boards and served a lot of different committees, but that was my favorite volunteer activity, other than coaching youth sports.
Serving in local government elected positions like that is a very important role. You're doing a huge service for the community, and it's often a thankless job. So I'll take a moment to just thank you for doing that and making Kennett Square a better place.
You do get some tomatoes thrown at you on occasion, and it's when there are problems, there are bigger problems than you get usually with other boards, just because of the magnitude of things, and just communicating with people, and people asking you, hey, well, what's going on here, or why is this happening, and and then you get the chance to talk with them, and thank you for the thank you, but it was and it's not as political usually as it is, at a federal level, or even a state level, but it should just be neighbors trying to make the town where you live a better place to be, and that sort of thing. So being able to do that, I think it's not for everyone. People either really enjoy it or really dislike it, but I really enjoyed it. It was, like I said, I really enjoyed my 8 years on council.
Well, you mentioned tomatoes being thrown at you, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit based on that. But you're also a baseball fan, so maybe that's why you handled tomatoes being thrown at you so well. You grew up playing ball at Kennett High School, and you spent more than a few years coaching the sport again at Kennett High School. You also coached your young sons' teams.
Still do, yes.
Wow. So 2 questions for you on that. What position did you play, and what's so special to you about baseball?
I was a shortstop mostly in Little League, and then when I became 13, I became a catcher, and then I caught for the rest of my career. So I played in adult leagues over in Westchester and in Delaware County for probably 7 or 8 years, and just got to the point where I was coaching at the high school, and I didn't have time to do both. And I said, it's just more fun at this point to, work with young people and coach and mentor and all that kind of thing. Baseball is a great sport when it's played well. There's such a great rhythm to it. There's, like many things, there's different levels of strategy, the game within the game, and looking at that and trying to figure out what the pitcher's doing, and the adjustments that the batter makes, and all those kinds of things. I just find fascinating when it's played well. I like baseball. I think I like the fact that it's a team sport, but it still has an individual component. When you're in the box versus a pitcher, then it's you versus him, and that's where it is. But yet you're still playing within a team environment, which I enjoy. It's just, I've loved it since I was a baby. My parents said they would put me in front of the TV in my little bouncy seat or whatever, and I'd just sit there and watch baseball, and it would pacify me. It would occupy me for time. So, I've always enjoyed it. And ironically, my older son was the same way. I told my wife, I guess my mom told my wife that story. So at 6 months, Brett was sitting there and through the magic of DVR and all that kind of stuff, it's always baseball season, right? So it would be the winter, and she would need to go do laundry or whatever. And so she'd put him in the thing, and he'd just sit there and be fascinated. So it was all good. So, it's a great sport. So, love football and other sports and that kind of thing. But, baseball is certainly, special for us. And that, So my kids like to play, and that's great to see as well. So they get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And so it's great to see.
It's funny you played catcher because I played catcher when I was in Little League as well. And I happened to be at a Chester County Economic Development Council breakfast, and we got on the topic of baseball. And going around the room, it was amazing the number of local business leaders who played catcher. And it's like, how did we all play catcher? I guess we're all on different teams or something, but it's just interesting position and how that has translated directly to the business world, evidently.
It's kind of a leadership position. So you're kind of the quarterback out there. So it kind of makes sense. And I think you're also looking at everyone, right? Everyone's looking at you, and you're the only one who can see the entire field. I think I saw where catchers, like more managers, even in the MLB, are former catchers than any other position, probably for some of those things those reasons we just talked about. But it's great. It was a great position. Love playing it. So my oldest son has gravitated towards it as well. The younger son's left-handed, so he likes to pitch. So said, keep on pitching, buddy. You're left-handed. Keep on doing it. But the older one likes to catch.
So we were down in Kennett Square last night for their kind of pre-holiday season kickoff event. It was really fantastic. Got the chance to go up and down State Street and visit a whole number of shops and venues and restaurants and the like. And it's really clear that that downtown part of Kennett Square has a great vitality about it. And it's a wonderful place to shop and dine, relax, and what have you. You're a property company based in Kennett Square. You absolutely have a financial interest in how well Kennett Square as a place to do business and all the things I talked about. How are you supporting the marketplace?
We live 2 blocks from State Street. I bought the house in 2007, and it needed a lot of work. Love the location, though. Love the bones about it, but it needed a lot of work. So I don't think I moved in until the summer of 2008. But one of the reasons why we live where we do is because we like being a part of Kennett and the festivals. And there's times when the street gets shut down for this or that, but by the same token, you're right there. So we love to walk. It's a very walkable town. Having Anson B. Nixon Park in our backyard is terrific. Being close to the library, being close to going down and be able to get some ice cream, or obviously all the different restaurants and that sort of thing. So we spend a lot of time and money in Kennett. Go to the market just about every day for lunch. We usually go Friday nights, family dinner. So my parents and my sister and brother-in-law and niece, and friends of ours, usually every Friday. We're actually going to miss tonight. That's a bummer, but other things come up. But just try to support local and obviously, we have an interest. But again, that's one of the reasons why we decide to live where we do, because we love being in town and being able to walk and there's a lot of great places, some that we're involved with and others that we're not, but that we still like to go, visit and that sort of thing. So whether we're picking up sushi from Lily's to take home, or, Braylock, we like going there and that sort of thing. But obviously, we love La Verona and Portobello's and that sort of thing. But, there's Kennett, we're getting into the holidays, and the parade's tomorrow, which is always a great night. And there's the tinsel in the town, and there's the events at the creamery, and the Holiday Village Market, and all those kinds of things. And the Memorial Day Parade and Mushroom Festival, obviously, that's the market's favorite weekend of the year is the Mushroom Festival. So there's a lot going on, but certainly we try to support the town, not just our, like I said, the properties that we're associated with, but the others as well.
Geoff, I'm thinking back over your answers here today, and working for yourself, working for your dad, working in the hometown you love so much, owning a bar. These all sound very idyllic in many ways, but no job is without its stresses and headaches. So to keep it real, paint a realistic picture of some of the challenges you face with running your business. What makes you want to pull your hair out sometimes?
We the other day we had there was a water main break in Kennett, so trying to wrestle with that, and there's obviously nothing you can do, and the borough does a great job, and things happen, and it got fixed in a relatively timely fashion. But just dealing with that and communicating, and then people still trying to finish their day in buildings where water supply is limited becomes a challenge, and then the aftermath of the next day it created an issue at the 110 building where Labrador and Portobello's are in the offices above that. We had to spend 3 or 4 hours yesterday trying to get everything back to where it was, just from I won't bore you with all the details, but just trying to work through all of that. And then the same token, you have a leak in a building right down the street, and you're trying to move forward and with doing some construction on some other things that we're working on. So yeah, I mean, there's always something when there's enough things going on that things happen. So you always get those calls. Certainly in the macro issue, it's trying to control your costs. We're in an environment where in the last several years we've had a lot of inflation in managing construction costs, and quite frankly that's changed the landscape. We were working on a project, and we spent considerable amount of money on it, and in terms of the engineering and the development, and it took us a while to get to the finish line. When we did, all of the financial costs in terms of the construction changed. So like the project, we spent years working on something, and we got to the finish line, and it was no longer a viable project because costs had escalated so much. So that's a super frustrating situation. Tenants making sure that you're at a good occupancy rate. There's a lot of fixed costs. So if the buildings aren't filled, then that creates a challenge and can create a financial stress or burden. We've done a pretty good job of managing that, but that's obviously something always in the back of your head. And then you get the macro, the geopolitical issues. Where are interest rates right now? What's the general market for commercial real estate in the, not only in this area but in the broader scope. So you're trying to follow some of that news and figuring out where the market's headed, if you will. And there's obviously some things you can control. I heard something, and I tell people this. I tell my kids all the time. There's 2 things in this world that you can truly control: your effort and your attitude. And you need to make sure you can control those, because there's things happen that are out of your control, and you can only react to it and make the best of it. So I try to say that to myself every day when things aren't going a certain way. But we've been fortunate. Like I said, we try to work really hard and try to have a vision and a plan. But we've had more good than bad. But some days are, if I had hair, then it would be out.
Geoff, you shared a number of times the different places that great dining venues that rent from you and are your tenants, and you've listed a whole bunch. But I'm curious. Kennett has so many wonderful places to eat, and in a good way, new places pop up pretty regularly in and around the southern end of the county. Certainly in Kennett for sure. Can you name a newer venue that is still on your must-get-to list? Where's somewhere that you're really looking forward to eat that you haven't been to yet?
Both my kids play baseball and they both play football in the fall. So we were juggling 4 sports for the fall, and those just ended a couple weeks ago. So we're don't get to go out as much as we would like. My younger son's team, his travel team, we started, speaking of the market, we got in the habit of going after wins. So like, boys, hey, if we win, then we're going to go to the market, and the team is pretty good. So we ended up having, quite a few post-game celebrations there. But there's a lot of great restaurants, and we got to go to Portobello's and La Barone last week, and like I said, those are a little trickier during to go as quite as often as we'd like during their seasons. But we've gotten to do those. The Naked Olive is really good. I generally don't like to get in my car to go to a restaurant, but that's one that is pretty good. So if I'm going to get in my car, then that's one that we will do. We haven't been there in a while, but we'll probably do that soon. Hangry Bear is another one, and that's I feel like it's very community oriented, and we love things about that. It's a little more casual kind of place, and that one's another one that we like to frequent. That's not in Kennett, but like I said, the Braylock is great. So that's always a good option. We get Lily's takeout, and still miss Kennett Brewing, miss KBC. So I don't know if there's a new one quite on my radar. But those are the ones that we like to go, and frequent. There's other good ones as well, but those are at the top of our list usually.
Yeah, that's a great list. And I just want to share for folks who do like ice cream. Hangry Bear does flights of ice cream. Flights of ice cream. I'm just going to share that for our listeners, because that's worth the stop right there, a flight of ice cream.
Yeah, and they're very, like I said, community oriented. They've given back. They're supportive of a lot of local things, which I love, and that's kind of part of our ethos. So that that's always one that's an easy one to support if we are going to get in the car. Which, like I said, I love just walking to dinner. That's a great deal.
And folks, I just want to share that we spoke with Melinda Shaw from Hangry Bear previously on the show. So we'll definitely include a link to that conversation. She's a really amazing business leader and has a fantastic venue for ice cream and so much more.
Well, now that we've talked about the fun stuff, I want to ask one question about more serious stuff. Geoff, could you educate us about the buying, renovating, and renting commercial properties? Understanding we need to keep this under a minute or two. Tell me maybe about what you look for. How do you decide where to buy, and how do you figure out how much renovation is going to be enough to make people want to be there and to keep it within the budget and the spreadsheets you have?
It's got to be in the right area. First and foremost, it's got to be in an area that where there has to be some potential, and a lot of it comes down to the municipality, where they have a thought process in terms of where they view their town going. It's no secret that I think Kennett is a town that has had a lot of good thought processes behind it in terms of having a plan. Oxford, I feel the same way, and so that's got to be it, because we've been in towns that if there's not support from the upper administration, then it's just not going to work. The things aren't going to go the way they should. And then the building has to. I would say it has to make sense, and it depends on how much renovation in terms of the cost. So I would say, okay, if we're going to pay X for it, and we need to put Y into it, and we need to be very judicious in terms of coming to that number and knowing that you don't see everything on a tour. There's going to be hidden costs and that sort of thing. But we've gotten, pretty good. My dad's really good at figuring those kinds of things out, and say, okay, if we're going to put X, if we're going to buy it for X and we're going to put Y into it, Z needs to be higher than X and Y. And, how long is it going to take for us to do it? What's the, what's it look like on the other side? And again, and how does it fit into the town? Like, what can we do here that's going to be a viable piece of what, that municipality is looking for, and how can we improve the municipality by doing all that? So, in a nutshell, I'd say that's a thing. It's just a lot of talking and going back and probably looking at it again and driving by after the visit, going at different times. So, I've looked at properties, go by in the evening when no one's around, or go by first thing in the morning or on a weekend. And how does this fit with what we're trying to do? And how does that fit into the global view of the municipality? And, how's it going to support the town? How's the town going to support it? So I think that's in a nutshell. It's not a quick process. It's not, yeah, that shirt looks good. Okay, let's go ahead and buy it. It's a process. I think the Liberty Place building, and this was totally random. We looked at it August 19th of 2009 was the first time we looked at it.
Wow.
And we settled on August 19th of 2010. So that was a random thing we didn't realize until afterwards. And it took us probably 6 months to get it. And then maybe not 4 months to get it under contract and to figure it out. And then it took us another 8 months to settle on it. That one's probably a little more exaggerated than most, but that was just, from a timeline perspective, we had a year of time invested in it before we actually closed on it. And then you had more time obviously after that in terms of getting it up and running and going from there. And then the market opened 3 years later. We had other tenants before then in the offices, but so, it's a from 2009 till July of 2013, it was almost 4 years until the building was, in its current state, if you will.
That's certainly a journey. I expect that the southern end of the county better than most. You've lived there your whole life. You were raising your own family there. You have businesses properties across the southern end of the county. Tell us about a local business or nonprofit that more folks should know about.
Local business, we've touched on a number of them in Kennett. I'm going to say another local business, though, in Oxford that I absolutely love is Flowers Cafe. Josefina Flores, she worked at Kebab Burritos. I know that's one of Eric's favorites at the market. And Josefina was a great employee, did an amazing job for, I think, 7 or 8 years. And then she had a dream to start on her own. On her day off, she went over to Mary Pat's and she worked with Tim at Mary Pat's just to learn the breakfast side of things. So, and then she started, it was a little over a year ago, that she opened her doors at Flowers Cafe in Oxford, and she's doing a great job down there, and food's delicious. It's kind of Mary Pat's-ish. It's a breakfast and lunch place for those who don't know Mary Pat's, but you should know Mary Pat's because Mary Pat's is really, really good at the market. It's one of my favorites. As she has a little bit of a Latino flair on an American breakfast place. So, given her Mexican background, there's a number of Mexican shaded dishes, if you will, on top of that, and then straight classic American breakfast as well. But she does a great job, and her family's involved. It's a really great story. Nonprofits, there's a number of awesome nonprofits, and I think you guys spoke with Daniel Embry from Kennett Collaborative. I was on the Kennett Collaborative board. Daniel's one of my favorite people in Kennett. The Mushroom Run that was just done a couple weeks ago. Sarah Nuri and Karen DiMascola and Kara Gibbons started that. I was on council, and I just remember them coming to. They had this dream and this vision and all this energy, and I was like, these they're awesome. They're it's going to be really successful. You can just tell based on how motivated they were and how much energy they had, and they do a great job. I think they had over 1,000 runners this year, which is great to see. So I think in 10 years they've grown, probably from 100 or 200 runners to 1,000. So that's we always like to support local charities and local organizations, and those are a couple that we really have an interest in, just based on what they do for the community. And obviously the Mushroom Festival and Camp Dreamcatcher. There's so many good ones in and around Kennett, the Youth Garage. But I want to give a shout out to the Mushroom Run folks as well.
That's a great answer. We'll be sure to put links to those organizations in the show notes. And also we'll call out the episode where we interviewed Daniel Embry with Kennett Collaborative. So thank you for that answer. Quick question for you. Are you hiring or looking for any new contractors or service providers at that time we can help you find?
We're always looking. So, we're always trying to better our business and that sort of thing. Like I said, from an office standpoint, I don't think we have a need. I think in terms of our model, I think we're kind of where we are, but certainly new contractors and all that sort of thing. So we're busy and we're looking for a new project to sink our teeth into and that sort of thing. But we're always looking for sure.
Well, Geoff Bosley, Vice President and CFO of LGB Properties. Where can listeners connect with you to learn more about LGB Properties and maybe review what restaurants are waiting to welcome them to the market at Liberty Place?
So lgbproperties.com and my the office telephone number's on there, my email's on there. So I always love connecting with new people and talking with new people and that sort of thing. And people send ideas, about the market, and that's, so we appreciate that. And there's always folks reaching out, bands that want to be a part of it. We always like to we have music every Friday and Saturday. You don't want to have the same music all the time. We have a lot of good performers and that sort of thing, but we're always looking for new ones. So a lot of people reach out and say, hey, I have an interest. I love coming there, but I have a band and like to play there sometimes. So, we go through that whole process and all that. So, so I try to be available to reach out to people, or if people want to reach out, I'd love to chat with them.
Geoff, thanks so much for chatting with us today. It's been a real pleasure to spend time with you, get to know a little bit about you and hear about your business. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Geoff Bosley, thank you for coming on. And thank you also to my co-host, Liam Dempsey. I'm Eric Goodmanson. The Start Local podcast is published every 2 weeks. We invite you to subscribe to Start Local using your favorite podcast app or ask your smart speaker to play the Start Local podcast. You can visit the Start Local website at startlocal.co for show notes, including links mentioned on this show and summaries of past episodes. We hope you join us for the next episode. Thank you for listening.